I want to thank people for joining on YouTube. We're going to talk about something called Off the Grid 3. It's called The New Economy Rising. And I find myself going a little bit slower because I want you to understand what I'm saying, because this is to your benefit. Hey, Tenderheart. So let's get started. I started a series called Off the Grid. And if you know, the natural definition of off the grid is living in a place of everything that's contrary to how most people live. You live remotely, you provide for yourself, you're exercising your sovereignty and your authenticity, and you love it. It's kind of living without rules, you've got your land. But let's look at it at a different reality. Let's look at it that we're living off the grid. Most people can't live like that. So how do you, in this day and age, with everything that seems to be wanting you to comply to a narrative of fear or chaos or the constant repetition that some people might listen to if they're listening to the news. I don't that much, but there are lots of people out there, and it's this narrative that's such a low vibrational frequency. So there is a way to live in the world, but not of the world, with being aware of what's going on. So this whole realm of creating an economy, what it's basically doing, it's not so much what's flowing out of you. Yes, you will create a life, a business, something innovative. It's more though, before you can create what flows out of you, the whole purpose of rising up into a new economy is knowing who you are in the process. Because you do not want to create something just to create something. This flow of your being has to flow into whatever you choose to create that has your stamp of essence on it, because there is no one like you. There will never be anybody like you, because you are very individual, you are unique, and you are creative. So let's talk about some basic principles, like what is an economy? Why preach on this, and what does this mean? So part of my job is I love to break things down. I'm always thinking, I'm always curious, I'm always reading. And sometimes I have the ability to take very broad, complex topics, and I want to bring them down because I know what people are facing is their daily life. They want to know how it influences their daily life so we can live conceptually and we can talk about spirituality. But for most people, the realm of having to live in the world but not of the world can press on them so much that they fail to see that they're incarnate for such a time as this. So what does economy mean? We all have an idea of what it means because we're looking, and all we're hearing right now is inflation and fears and food shortages. So that narrative of a real strong vibrational energy is trying to invade our space so that it catapults itself right in the middle of who we are. And then we move, listen, according to the narrative of that reality. Now, are some of those things happening? Yes, they are, but you don't live according to that. So in wisdom, you have to live in a different economy with a different mindset and a different perspective, being in the world, but not of it. So what happens is, let's look at the definition of economy. And again, we're focusing on what's inside of us. If there's a new economy rising up, in essence, it's rising up as a new creation. New in the Bible is a word that means unprecedented, never seen before. It doesn't mean an upgrade. It doesn't mean buying a new car or buying a new computer. It means something that's never been seen before. Do you believe that there is within you the ability to connect in the quantum field of potential and possibility through the Christ self in God, that all the promises are there, all the focus is there? You've been given the ability through your mind and your heart, which again, we're going to speak more about in the coming days, in that coherence of an increasing vibration of love and gratitude, you are able to access the plans and the purposes of your life here in the earth, in the 3D realm. We do not negate this realm. So an economy, if you look at that definition, it means a careful management of available resources. Now, put that right in your life. You have the ability to regulate your life in your authenticity and your sovereignty, because sovereignty means the authority of a state to govern yourself. You are your own government. You regulate the boundaries of what can come in and what does not come in. You regulate the boundaries of your creativity and of your spirituality, because you are greater than this. You are in the world, but not of the world. So you are abiding by an economy that is limitless and restful and bathed in love, but many don't see it. So they're tossed and turned by the economic reality of fear that surrounds us. So it comes from the French word économie, and it's via Latin from the Greek, and it's oikonomia, and that means house management. So if we're going to rise up into a new economy, we're going to have to know how to manage our house. What is our house? This is my house. I have the authority and the authenticity and the sovereignty to let energy in and to not go in a certain direction. I have that authority to set the beautiful boundaries that you don't trespass this area. I have the authority to resonate with my energy in the direction I want to go. I have the authority who I'm going to be close to, who I'm not going to be close to. And all of that is coded with love and gratitude, and it's worked in wisdom. I'm not saying like just get rid of everybody in your life. I'm saying that there is a way as you establish a divine economy in your life, as you look at the boundaries of your own authenticity and sovereignty. Some have to learn how to say no. Some have to learn how to, in order to find themselves, they have to enter a time of aloneness because you've given so much of yourself out that you don't even know who you are anymore. Some of you have been so bound by religious laws and traditions that freedom absolutely terrifies you. You haven't made a decision in so long. You've been told what to do, how to do it, what to believe. And when you're standing with the ability to realize you can co-create from this divine assurance of economy, you don't know what to do. So there is a way to shift right now, and that is why quantum principles are being taught, but that's just the beginning. That's not the ending point. We are constantly going to evolve into what someone posted today, a fluid reality of who we are. So this economy is the authority of yourself to govern yourself, to not do what everybody else does, to believe when everybody else is not believing, to know that you know something greater because within yourself, you know there is hope for the future. It is to shift your whole mindset in a heart field of gratitude and love, to know that there is something better and you are more than you've ever imagined yourself to be. And that is in the midst of a world and of a 3D realm that is constantly telling you that it wants to pull you down. So you are called to innovate. What does that name mean? It says make changes in something, especially by introducing new methods, ideas, or products. You are your divine economy. So what is God speaking within you in the depths of your true design, not anyone else's? Your Christ self, that true ground of being, what is being spoken to you to create in your life. And that is limitless. I'm creating courses. I want to create a school. You may want to create a better life. You want to be a better family person. You want to bond with your family and create a home environment that is so beautifully economically sound as to give your children a true revelation of the essence of who they are. You may want to create a business, and everything right now says it's not the time. That's not true. If the spirit or your Christ self is saying you now is the time, it is the time. And we're going to talk about it when we talk about how Jeremiah bought the field. Now that really got to me. I'm not against the Old Testament. I love the whole Bible as a mystical book. I love the prophets. And when I began to see it through a different lens, I can go anywhere as spirit brings this up and reveals it to me. And I could see it through a quantum lens of energy. So you are called to innovate. And that kind of, it says that it studies, if you innovate, it's in the natural realm, it's when individuals and businesses, governments, and nations make choices, listen, how to allocate resources. So in this new economy of Deborah, in this new economy of Mary, in this new economy of Anna, you're giving this expansive energy signature that you're learning how to resonate to what is going to be beneficial to your expansion and growth. And that means yes to some things, no to other things. let me tell you, it is a rising of the divine feminine, both in man and in woman. It is a rising of the creativity of the divine feminine and the innovation of the divine feminine. So you're going to learn how to allocate resources. If a company wants to innovate, they can't go in all different directions. They have to follow their niche and their brand and do the best they can in that niche and in that brand. But what about you? Do you give yourself away freely and therefore deplete your energy because you're tired, because you're a people pleaser, or you want to be liked by everybody? Is that the proper way to allocate the resources of your economy? How can you be fine-tuned in how you have been designed to allocate your resources? And you may alienate people. They might not like you anymore, say bye, see ya. And you may draw other people that you can't draw because you're being surrounded by a circle of people that want to keep you comfortable in how they perceive you to be. So when you begin to start allocating resources, it's very individual to you. You will know. You can't walk my life. I can't walk yours. I know when I'm resonating with someone and when I'm not. And remember, love guides all this, rules all this, resonates in all of this. So this new creation, as I said, is unprecedented. In what is here that is being unveiled to us, we don't know that about ourselves. If new means unprecedented and never seen before, are you ready to start birthing ideas that you had no idea were even in you, that they're new and you've never considered it, or you've never known what is the ground of my being? How am I made? How am I designed? Because you've been so busy serving and being everything to everybody that you forgot to be you. So in this being you, as you are a new creation, things will come up. And the first thing may be, how do I do that? I've never done that before. But it's only that first whisper to innovate a life that is built upon following the resonance of energy and to face this frontier of the unknown and being sure in yourself that you're following along just as you are called to do. For that is why you're in time for such a time as this. So it's rising against the norm. It's moving out of the energy of fear, anxiety, lack, hoarding, to finally be able to see extraordinary opportunities that can be seen through a perspective of the limitlessness of the quantum field, of the Christ field. That is why we're talking about this, because that field of potentiality waits for you to do what's necessary. What do I mean? Face your insecurities, face your control through ego, face certain things in what people would call shadow work of things that need to be healed in your subconscious in order for many to even perceive what they're seeing. I hope you guys are seeing me. It didn't freeze. So now let's talk about Jeremiah. Why Jeremiah? I think I'm being spoken to from this because I used to love reading about Jeremiah. He was insignificant. He was called at a young age. He didn't have his whole act together, but he was a high vibrational reality being. All the prophets were high vibrational. They saw into a different timeline. What they prophesied has no relevance to us, okay? It has no relevance to us. We are not called to do that. Okay, we're not called to extrapolate those verses from the Old Testament and to speak them out today. They moved in a timeline, hear me, of a high frequency for their time. And they moved in a greater timeline of hope, speaking to a nation that had to be spoken to as far as direction. So they were high vibrational beings. And they had to know it wasn't a belief system that they had. It didn't matter what they spoke. They didn't speak from a belief system. And we don't speak from a belief system. We speak from a knowing. It's very different. It's internal to us, this knowing. So let's look at Jeremiah and why he bought this field and what this has to do with you, if it has to do with you. I know that it's very real to me and very substantial. And the more I got into it, the more I realized that it's time to create something in the face of an army that's coming at you saying, don't do this now. Can't do this now, not the right timing. Do you want to lose all your money? Do you want to lose your following? Are you sure you're interjecting anxiety and doubt into a forward momentum? But that isn't what Jeremiah did. He did everything that was contrary to the norm. He was moving in his own economy because he had a hope for the future, because God spoke to him and said, if you see this allegorically, if you see this as literal, however you see it, God spoke within Jeremiah and said, I'm going to give you hope and a future. And that was the ground of his being and enabled him to see that in a different timeline, while at the same time seeing the reality of what existed in his time, which was chaos and destruction. So he thought he could get straight through all that chaos. And in the midst of it, he said, I'm good. I'm going to weather this. God says, so it's not enough, Jeremiah. It's not enough. You got to now buy a field. But there's an army approaching. Yeah, I know, but buy the field. But it sounds ridiculous. Yeah, I know, but buy the field. And there was an adamancy about what he heard, that he had to do it because he saw beyond this reality, because he was moving in a greater timeline in the quantum field in his Christ self. Christ didn't originate when Jesus came. It was always there. There was always the field. They might not have had an awareness about it, but they moved in it. David moved in his Christ self. Isaiah moved in the Christ self. How could David have written at such a high level of vibration in the Psalms if he was not moving in a reality of his Christ self? How did he do some of the things he did unless he was pulled out of his current timeline? He was revolutionary and he was radical. We need to start looking at these people different than how we've looked at them. So God says to Jeremiah, I shaped you in the womb. I knew all about you. He says the same, God is revealing the same thing within each of us. We are known, we are loved, and our life is not a script. God invites us through our Christ self, through the coherence of our mind and our heart, to enter the possibility of the quantum field, where everything we need that is for the true design of living in this world and rising higher in consciousness is there for us. We are not orphans without any direction, without any supplies, without any resources, but we have been so torn down by religion, denominations, and everything that we've had to get rid of that clutter, because that formed a noise that we couldn't even hear, and it formed a blockage we couldn't see. But Jeremiah saw, because God says, before I formed you, I knew you. Nothing to worry about, Jeremiah. But Jeremiah still expressed doubt. And one of the things God said is, I have holy plans for you, Jeremiah. You're a prophet. That's what I have in mind for you. The true design of Jeremiah was a prophet before he even knew how to move in the reality of what that meant. So what is God within you saying to you? What is your Christ self? Do you ever ask yourself, by putting your hand on your heart and saying, who am I? Past the identification of titles or job titles or being a mother or being a father, who am I? What is my true design? And God within Jeremiah rose up and said, I have called you as a prophet. And Jeremiah's immediate response, which is probably most of our response when we hear the possibility that belongs to us, Jeremiah says, hold on. This is what the Message Bible says. I don't know anything. I'm only a boy. Have you walked away? You're hearing that now. I believe many of you are hearing that now, but you're bargaining and you're fighting that, saying, I can't do this because of all this inadequacy I have, because of everything I don't believe, the doubt, the anxiety, and the fear. And most of us, and many of you, are fighting this because of your need to know, your need to have a logical explanation and a step-by-step plan. You're not going to get it. There's sometimes, for what we're going into is so fluid, there is no logical explanation that is going to form a timeline where we know the next step before we walk in this step. There is a need to release the need for control, for reputation, for honor, and we have to be brought down, if I could say it like that, into that place in order to rise up and create, because we cannot be attached to outcomes. We cannot be attached to outcomes when the Christ self is showing us to step out to do this. Our mind can start going, but what about this? I've been there. You can't go there. You just have to follow the fluidity of the energy, knowing that this has been ordained for you before time began. And Jeremiah, he voiced all those insecurities. he rose up and he said everything. I can't do it. I can't do it. And God kept saying to him. So it says that God reached out, touched his mouth and said, listen, Jeremiah, I'm going to make it easy. I've just put your word, my word in your mouth, hand delivered. Well, what does that say to us? You're not going to fail. There's no failure in God. You may have to learn these things a few times, but there is no failure. If you back away from something, you need to stop your own condemnation and your regret and your despair. And you need to then move into the reality of that you can progress further along this course because it's not been scripted for you. It's not this book that's written that has everything in it. You are called to co-create. You have a part in this, in your incarnation. You as Christ, as the Christ in the world today, you have a part in following through in the flow of the field of energy to create what is part of your grand design. So then God says to Jeremiah, see what I've done? I've given you a job to do among the nations and governments. Your job is to, this is so good. He says to Jeremiah, your job is to pull up and tear down, take apart and demolish, and then start over, building and planting. Hello for all of those who are involved in deconstruction. It didn't take me long to deconstruct. I kind of left the whole system, went back in for a little bit. I didn't feel guilty. I kind of saw myself being pulled back into it, but my deconstruction was pretty quick. May not be your thought. But see, we deconstruct and we pull down and we tear down. Before Jeremiah could adequately move in the knowing that was in him to make a choice to buy a field, when everything in his being said, this is crazy, he had to have that knowing formed into the ground of his being. You can't step out if there's still doubt. You keep moving forward. So he had to know you got to pull down. You've got to critique yourself. You've got to sit with yourself. You've got to meditate with yourself. You've got to ask yourself these questions. They're not coming from the inside. When I struggled about this course and I hit a wall, like, do I really want to do this? Here's what I realized. I had to sit with myself, and this was a strong message. I'm not creating the course for you guys. I'm creating it for me. And when it launches within the next few days, it is for me to show you in an intuitive way and an intuitive method of teaching to find yourself. It's as simple as that. That is my purpose on this earth. My purpose is to be a forerunner, to show you what's out there, to give you the revelation. Have you seen this? Do you know this? And then it is up to you then to walk out the steps. So when I realized that I had nothing to prove, that I had pulled down and I had drawn down and I had demolished everything in myself that had anything to do with what I perceived as my ego, I got no plan B. I got no plan B. It rises or falls on my simple insight into this is the way I want my energy to go. I have nothing backing me. I am standing in that wide open field, and I'm not going to tell you it's easy, because that process of pulling those things down reveals things about yourself, but it brings healing, because then it says, then you start over. God says to Jeremiah, now you're going to start over and build. So before Jeremiah could prophesy everything that was in his ground of being, he had to deal with himself first. That's a far cry from what the prophets do today. And that's a misaligned, almost blasphemous word. And I don't want to use it that often, of the ability to step out without having looked and examined their own lives to tear down in order to build up. But that's another message. So Jeremiah moved in a higher vibration, the Christ self, in a particular timeline in his incarnation. It was not a mental assent, but a knowing. And David did that, and Isaiah did that. Now, for the next 10 minutes, let's look at this field. And so let this challenge you. And I ask right now that God begin to make it a little bit uncomfortable for you. That you know, you don't have to go to 50 people and ask for confirmations, that you know inside yourself that there is this whisper of a desire to create something that is more than you can ever imagine to allow yourself to flow in this beautiful reality of you. So let's look at the field. I'm still laughing that I even got this message. So let me tell you something about this field. At the time of Jeremiah being asked to buy a field, it says the king of Babylon was right there holding Jerusalem under siege. It was surrounded on all sides. There was no way out. There was no escape. It was there. It was coming, and they were there. And Jeremiah sat in prison without the ability to do anything. But he was in prison, get this, because he told the king, you know, king, this is going to happen. You're not going to get out of it, but I can promise you that there is a hope and a future coming. We need prophets, intuitives like that right now. We are not getting out of this mess, folks. We are not getting out of this mess, folks. The only way is through. We are going through in all this chaos. We are walking through the storm. We are walking through the battles, and we are not complying, but we are rising up in a greater consciousness to see differently and hear differently. Why? Because the ground of our being says that right there is a hope and a future. I've seen it, I know it, I feel it. And that is what kept Jeremiah going in prison. So he thought, I'm going to stay there forever because I've prophesied, and I'm going to use that word, even though I don't use it as much anymore. I've prophesied to the king, you're not getting out of it. This whole place is going to explode and implode. And you think you're going to win, you're not going to win, but I'm here to tell you, take heart, go through it with integrity, because we're coming out. There's a hope and a future. So I don't know if we give a false message to people. People here in California are almost living under a delusion, like nothing's going to happen. Everything's going to go along as normal. They're going to make $500,000 to $600,000, $700,000 on their home. They're going to move. The economy's okay. It's like they're living in a cognitive dissonance because they've never faced the reality that that something is already here. You can't avoid it. And there's not a whole lot of people here challenging that narrative. And if you challenge that narrative, you get shot down. So what about you? So you've been in prison, you've been enslaved by a religious reality that says, stay in your seat, don't rock the boat, don't question, don't ask, don't tell, don't know. And you're told to sit there, and you're told to not get up, and everything has failed. It doesn't matter if it's evangelical, the grace movement, the prophetic movement, it's all got glitches in it that you can't stay there. There's something more as we rise up, even past what we're learning right now. So I believe there's a hope and a future, or I will not take these chances and these risks that I'm taking. If I didn't believe that there was something I was moving into, then why am I doing it? I've got to believe, like Jeremiah, that there's a hope and a future. So you have to believe that behind all this facade, as you walk through it, you're following the call into something greater. And that greater is you. It's not what you create. It's who you are inside that enables you to even flow in what you create. So Jeremiah is sitting in this prison, and suddenly his cousin or his uncle, I forget, prepares the way in prison and says to him, hey, I got a deal for you. He says, buy my field in Anathoth, because you can, because it's all in the family, it's a legacy, and it has redemptive value. Buy this field. Now that's very, very important, because Jeremiah bought this field because there was something redemptive in him that was calling him into this transaction. And that's what I'm saying. You can't just know you're going to create something and then begin to do it in your own will. There has to become this redemptive change in you. And what are some of the words of redemption? What are some of these words? To succeed, to fulfill, a recovery return on everything you've lost. There's a certain principle now that we're buying back our lives, people. We're buying back our essence from religion that has sought to destroy us and rail us down into compliance of being robots. And so Jeremiah says, what, I'm going to buy this field. Have you seen what's going on out there? So it's God speaking right now, making us very uncomfortable, because our Christ self is saying, go for it, go for it. It's redemptive. It has a future. It has a purpose. You may not see it, but there's no regret. Go for it. Follow your dream, follow the whisper, follow the revelation and the insight that's coming from the quantum field. So it says this, the cousin says, buy my field, and Anna thought, you have the legal right to buy it. Ain't nobody can tell you what you can and cannot do. You have the legal right, you have the authentic right, you have the sovereign right to be you, no holds barred. Nobody can take away the substance of your ground of being. Nobody can take away what is integrally linked within your very being. So what this cousin says, buy my field, you have the legal right to keep it in the family. Buy it, take it over. The right of redemption is yours. So for some of you right now, you're getting this inkling, as I said, to do something, and you're wondering, is it okay? Stop looking outside yourself. Stop looking for endless confirmations, which the church has showed us to do. You know, find that verse in the Bible. No. Find that person to confirm it. No. Trust yourself and trust your intuition. You've got nothing to lose except yourself. Trust yourself. So the redemptive purpose in Jeremiah buying the field is that same redemptive purpose that's rising up in our hearts. And I'm not talking about an old religious notion of salvation and being redeemed from sin nature. This is not that. This is a metaphorical and a beautifully mystical way of looking at things that are birthing new light and new sound in my life, and I hope in yours. You are building, you're not building to build. You're not wanting to start something to succeed. Those are egocentric. That's not the reason you're doing that. Jeremiah could have never given this message unless it was ingrained in his being, in the very DNA, in the energy of his essence, to know this is who I am. There is a hope and a future. I'm going for it. It was not to win friends and influence people. It was not to make a name for himself. That is not it. You will create on the basis of your true design, and only you will know that. But when it's done, you will resonate with other people of like energy. Redemption, this taking on this, what seems impossible, what seems infinite, what seems beautiful, is a cleaning. It's a fulfillment. It's a retrieval. What is it retrieving? It's you, folks, where you stand in who you are, naked, unashamed, no justification, no qualification. This is who I am, and I'm going forward in this, whether it seems to fail, whether it seems to succeed, because listen, it doesn't matter. That's the outward affirmation. You have succeeded. There is no failure. By the simple fact is that you're exploring something that seems totally out of your wheelhouse and simply saying, there's something in me that I have to do, I have to see, I have to be. And everything in me has come into time for such a time as this. So he said to Jeremiah, buy the land. Jeremiah says, it's under enemy control. A lot of you are being held back because your ego is telling you everything you can't do, because you haven't surrendered that, because the ego is powerfully to work with you. It is involved with you in creating, but you're still living in fear. You're enslaved to religion. You're enslaved to what the church has told you. You're enslaved to so many things that's under the enemy control. And Jeremiah, he was like going, well, where is this going? If I buy this field, what's it going to be destroyed before it even starts? He was using a bit of his logical linear mind, but then suddenly hope was restored and he rises up. So that which is asking you to create is familiar and redemptive in a change of total mind innovation. This is total heart innovation. It's new, it's fresh, it's unprecedented, and you're going to meet you. You are going to stand there and you're going to look at yourself and say, I didn't even know that was me, because I've been so enslaved and so pulled down. You are about to enter, if you figure this out in your life, into a transformative discovery to find out energetically who you are as you rise in consciousness, to find out what you're called to create in this realm that will produce greater light and greater sound, and a rise in consciousness will give you a sense of great peace, a sense of great rest, and it doesn't have to produce anything externally. Maybe you'll make money from it, maybe you won't, but there will be such a fullness of joy within you, such a fullness of peace, such a fullness of love. You will emit that energy signature, sometimes going out 8 feet. Connections will come to you. Resonance of ideas will come to you because you are generating this electromagnetic field because you have stepped into you, not someone else, you. If you never, okay, so Jeremiah 32 also then says, he does it. It says it was a legal exchange, very different. And then he begins to doubt a little. He goes through with it. Why did he go through with it? Because he saw outside of the current timeline. He was speaking into the timeline, and he was saying, I'm going to rise above this. Some of you need to speak into the timeline of people trying to tell you who you are. And don't be afraid to look ridiculous. Don't be afraid to look foolish. Don't be afraid to be misunderstood. Don't be afraid of any of that. Be you. And so he had to, then everyone experiences that little bit of doubt. I did yesterday, as my friends know. And I had to pull back and wonder, wait a minute, who am I doing this for? So then all of a sudden, hope rises up within him and said, okay, I just did what appears to be to most people to be the stupidest thing in the world. And he was in prison. He was so low to begin with, and then he buys a field. I mean, hello, think about that. But then out of his mouth, he says this, oh, now this is to his generation. Remember, it's not applicable to you. He says, the God of Israel, life is going to return to normal. Homes and fields and vineyards are again going to be brought in this country. In the midst of devastation, I will launch out in hope, knowing I will flourish and I will prosper, not dependent upon what's going on. So then he says, God, you created earth and sky by your great power, by merely stretching out your arm. He saw the intentions that he set. He saw the act of buying the field, and he saw the field and saw his Christ self and said, let me continue to speak into that with no need for an outcome. Hear me. You will set your intentions on just the beauty of moving out in this, and you will surrender to the outcome. You will have no expectations on what the outcome will produce, but you will have every expectation in yourself, knowing that you are beautifully and wonderfully made. And from that, there will come creativity. You will not be disappointed because your hope will not be in what you produce. Your hope will be in you and what you're creating. And from that hope, you will then begin to move out and will find success in wonderful and extraordinary ways, first within, then without. So there is a redemptive purpose within you. So let me read to you what I wrote on the Facebook Live today, and I'll let you go. Living off the grid and flowing in a new economy is redemptive, and there is redemption in Jeremiah buying this field, not salvation, redemption to move into his beautiful self. There is a redemptive purpose in you, something that you know why you're on this earth. I'm starting to discover that. Why are you here? I met with some people today, and that was the main question I asked them. Why are you here? And we don't know. I'm beginning to see. I'm beginning to see the ground of being of my purpose. You're not building to build anything. You're not looking to be successful for the sake of being successful. There is a desire in our hearts right now to be released from the expectation that others have placed upon us, and we subtly perform. Oh my God, look around. The jockeying for position, the need to, the subtle pain in people trying to prove who they are. There's that subtle desire to perform, to gain attention because we're in such pain. There's so many people in so much pain. They want somebody just to tell them they're okay. But yet we get that attention, we make a name for ourselves, and it backfires because there's no goodness there. There's no energy exchange there. There's nothing there except that which is momentary and fleeting because you still haven't found out who you are. Once you begin to discover why you're here for such a time as this, you are brave and courageous. And it is a great place to be. So there is a desire in our hearts right now to find out what will flow from us when all reputation dies, all identity goes by the wayside, and purpose seems non-essential. for the sheer joy of flowing in being who we are. Now, the overflow of that being will be creation. And you don't yet, many of you don't yet know what that is because you haven't even discovered yourself. So you try this, you create this, you do this, you serve here, you go here, you serve everybody else, but you don't serve yourself to find out who it is. So all those things take on no meaning because you're doing it because you don't know yourself. You're just going through the motion. This is deep. This is going deep. So this new economy off the grid, it's a path designed for you. And it's a path designed for me, a lighted path in which only you can walk. You are the economy ready to flow in all you are without any limitation, because there is no expectation or any outcome to perform. Do you know who you are? Do you know what rises you in energy? What brings you joy? What brings you peace? What is that? Who are you? Who are you? And why are you placed in time for such a time as this? This energy right now has stirred me into even being more courageous and more brave, and to launching out in various creative ways, because it's the essence of who I am. Not trying to show anything to anybody, not trying to prove anything to you. I want to do this. I will do this because there's something in me that's going to explode and open up and lead me to greater degrees of energy expansion that I don't know yet. You guys have a wonderful day, a really wonderful day. Don't think less of yourself than what you are. There's so much to say about this. This is only step one. Love you.